In the unforgiving cold of a distant, ice-blasted moon, an anomalous energy signature pulsed from deep beneath the crust. Lead robotics engineer Elara Vance confirmed its impossible complexity, her gaze fixed on the baffling data. What impossible secret lay beneath the ice of this forgotten moon? Their advanced drilling equipment shrieked as it finally breached the ancient ice, revealing not rock, but an impossibly vast void. The expedition team, tiny figures against the gargantuan scale, ventured inside, their headlamps swallowed by the cavernous darkness. Bioluminescent flora pulsed with soft, ethereal light, illuminating colossal skeletal arches that stretched into infinity. Elara Vance, her analytical mind struggling to reconcile the impossible biological and geological structures, felt a primal awe mixed with a scientific curiosity that bordered on reverence. This was no mere cave. It was the hollowed-out remains of a creature of unimaginable scale. Deep within what Dr. Eris Thorne, the xenobiologist, tentatively identified as the leviathan's ribcage, they found it. Bathed in a faint pulsing light that seemed to emanate from its very surface, lay a perfectly smooth, obsidian-like artifact. It hummed with a latent energy, a low thrum that vibrated through the very bones of the ancient creature. The air around it subtly distorted, shimmering like heat haze, a palpable warp in reality. Biological in origin? Eris murmured, leaning closer, his voice filled with wonder. Elara, however, felt a different kind of pull. This was not biology. This was engineering, alien and profound. A forbidden artifact, pulsating with alien power, waited to be touched. Elara ignored Eris, her portable diagnostic tools already whirring. Holographic readouts flickered before her, displaying energy signatures and elemental compositions that defied every known law of physics. The artifact was perfectly inert, yet vibrated with immense, contained power. Impossible metallurgy, impossible energy dynamics, she thought, her mind racing. It wasn't biological, but a construct. A theoretical, fold drive was her immediate hypothesis, a localized, space-time manipulation device. The implications were staggering, a bypass of conventional travel. Her gaze, intense and focused, lingered on the artifact's unchanging facade, a puzzle demanding her complete intellectual surrender. Can science explain the impossible, or is some knowledge better left unknown? With calculated precision, Elara activated the artifact. A shimmering distortion rippled outward, and a small section of the chamber, along with a geological sample stand, instantly jumped a few meters to the left. Incredible! Eris gasped, rubbing his temples. A sensory anomaly, I suppose. But Elara felt more than a sensory anomaly. A strange, fleeting mental echo, like a forgotten thought, brushed against her consciousness. Triumph warred with a subtle, unsettling feeling that something was profoundly, invisibly wrong. She stared at the obsidian surface, her gaze lingering, an idea, dangerous and seductive, beginning to form. Instantaneous travel is real, but at what hidden cost? Hours bled into days in Elara's lab, adjacent to the artifact chamber. Complex equations scrolled across her consoles, glowing schematics of theoretical applications filling the air. The artifact's energy signature was a symphony of paradoxes, and she was its rapt conductor. Captain Jax's voice, a static-laced interruption over the comms, registered barely above a whisper. Elara, we need you on the primary resource extraction plan. This artifact can wait. She dismissed him with a curt reply. Its properties are too significant to delay, Captain. My scientific approach will yield far greater returns for the mission. Her internal monologue hummed with the promise of efficiency, of untapped potential, pushing aside a subtle, unshakable foreboding. When curiosity becomes an obsession, how far is too far? The obsidian artifact became Elara's constant companion. Strapped securely to her utility belt, its faint hum a steady pulse against her side, it transformed her efficiency. Navigating the leviathan's vast meandering corridors, which could swallow hours, was no longer a logistical challenge. A quick mental calibration, a focused thought on her destination, a specific resource node, a malfunctioning robotic arm, and then a shimmering distortion. The world would blur for a fraction of a second, a sensation like a forgotten breath, before solidifying again. She was there. An instant jump of hundreds of meters, sometimes kilometers, bypassing treacherous terrain or labyrinthine biological structures. Her data logs, meticulously updated, confirmed it. A 73% reduction in travel time for routine tasks, a testament to its unparalleled utility. Unforeseen but undeniably optimized, she murmured to herself, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Back in her workshop, surrounded by the organized chaos of circuits and actuators, Elara reached for her favorite micro-torque wrench. She distinctly remembered placing it on the magnetic strip above her primary console. Her hand met empty air. A brief frown creased her brow. "Impossible," she muttered, her gaze sweeping the workbench. It wasn't there. 10 minutes later, she found it tucked inside a diagnostic port of a disassembled drone. A location so illogical, it irritated her precise mind. She picked it up. A faint sense of unease quickly rationalized. Fatigue, perhaps. Overworked circuits in my own gray matter. She shrugged, blaming her own absent-mindedness, and returned to her task, unaware of the subtle, almost imperceptible shadow that seemed to ripple across the artifact resting on her belt. In the mess hall, the crew's usual evening banter was punctuated by the clatter of utensils. Dr. Eris Thorne, always keen to share a biological observation, was explaining the curious, chitinous structure of a newly discovered leviathan parasite. Remarkably similar to terrestrial deep-sea barnacles, but with a unique silicate absorption mechanism, he concluded. Captain Jax, mid-bite of a nutrient paste bar, paused. "Didn't you just say that, Eris?" he asked, a hint of confusion in his voice. Eris blinked. "Did I? Perhaps I'm repeating myself. Long shifts." Jax nodded, shrugging it off. "Must be the deep space effect, then." Elara, observing from her table, felt a strange, cold resonance. It wasn't the first time. She'd heard similar conversational loops, dismissed by the crew as fatigue. Her analytical mind attributed it to the artifact's localized space-time distortions, perhaps briefly echoing vocal patterns. Yet, the unease persisted, a faint, unsettling whisper in her logical mind. A critical resource node, rich in exominerals, lay deep within a bioluminescent cavern, hours from the main base. The path was treacherous, requiring multiple rappels and a long crawl through narrow, unstable passages. Elara, tasked with deploying automated harvesters, looked at the schematics. Days of travel, or a single, calculated jump. The choice was clear. She engaged the artifact for a longer, more complex fold. The distortion was more pronounced this time, the blur stretching, pulling at her perceptions. For a fleeting moment, a stark, terrifying blankness filled her mind, a void where her own memories should have been. It passed in an instant, leaving behind a cold, clammy sensation. She suppressed it, focusing on the mission objective. The time saved was substantial. Hours of arduous travel reduced to seconds. Efficiency. It was paramount. The mission's success depended on her ability to optimize. The cold dread was a side effect, a variable to be ignored in the grand equation of progress. In the expedition's geological survey lab, the air hummed with data processors. Elara presented a crucial scan, detailing a unique stratum of fossilized organic matter she had personally discovered and analyzed. Her fingers flew across the holographic display, highlighting anomalies. Dr. Eris Thorne leaned in, his usual enthusiasm for xenobiological data evident. He studied the intricate patterns, then looked at Elara, a mild perplexity on his face. "Excellent work. Truly fascinating. Who ran this analysis, if I may ask? I don't recall seeing you on this shift, engineer." The word struck Elara like a physical blow. Her breath caught in her throat. She had spent the last 2 days on this, almost without sleep. Her name, her work. A jolt of pure, unadulterated fear shot through her. Eris's gaze was kind, but utterly blank of recognition for her contribution. The cold dread coiling in her gut was a sensation Elara rarely experienced, and one she intensely disliked. Back in her private quarters, the silence was heavy. She hunched over her personal console, fingers flying across the interface, reviewing her own logs. Every shift, Every task, every data entry was meticulously recorded. Everything was in order. Her name was on every report she'd submitted. Yet, Eris's words echoed. Lesfrance. Who ran this analysis? She cross-referenced her data, searched for any anomaly in her own digital footprint. Nothing. Logically, it had to be an external factor. The artifact. Its localized space-time distortions, perhaps, caused a form of cognitive dissonance, or temporal confusion, in those around her, an inability to process certain recent memories related to her. Not erasure. No, that was illogical. That was impossible. She stared at her reflection in the console, a flicker of doubt in her eyes as she tried to convince herself. The expedition's main control room buzzed with the low thrum of consoles and the murmur of focused voices. Elara Vance stood near the central display, observing the system diagnostics she had meticulously patched just hours ago. Captain Jax, a figure of stern authority, clapped another engineer, Commander Thorne, on the shoulder. "Excellent work, Thorne," Jax boomed, his voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. That scrubber recalibration was critical, saved us days of downtime. Elara's breath hitched. No, she thought. A sharp, internal protest. I did that. I spent the night on that code. She stepped forward, a desperate urgency in her movements. Captain, with all due respect, I completed that sequence yesterday. Commander Thorne merely verified my parameters. Jax turned, his brow furrowed. He looked at her, then back at Thorne, a flicker of confusion crossing his face before settling into a dismissive stare. Engineer Vance, he said, his tone flat. Thorne's report states he handled it. Perhaps you're mistaken. The words were a physical blow, and Elara felt a chill spread through her, colder than any Arctic wind. Her shadow, she imagined, seemed to stretch and thin behind her, an ephemeral stain on the polished floor. Back in the solitude of her private workstation, surrounded by the familiar clutter of her research, Elara felt a deeper chill. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she navigated her personal data logs. Project files she distinctly remembered initiating and completing now bore Commander Thorne's name. Her own notes, once filled with her precise angular script, contained unfamiliar loops and curves, as if another hand had guided the stylus. No, this isn't right. I wrote this, didn't I? A profound disorientation seized her, a vertigo of the mind. Was she truly losing her memory, or was her reality itself being rewritten? She clutched her head, the conflicting digital displays before her a mocking kaleidoscope of stolen work and altered truths. The reflection in the darkened console screen shimmered, distorting her face into something almost unrecognizable, a stranger peering back from the digital void. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of the Leviathan's vast, bioluminescent interior, a majestic, indifferent space. Elara stood there, a solitary figure against the cosmic grandeur, trying to ground herself in the overwhelming scale of the fossilized giant. Dr. Eris Thorne approached, his usual gentle demeanor tinged with a vague concern. Elara, he began, his voice soft. You've been quiet lately. Everything all right? Elara turned, a desperate hope flaring in her chest. Eris, do you remember when we first discussed the Leviathan's exobiology? The debate we had about its cellular structure over synth coffee? Eris smiled faintly, a kind but confused expression. Yes. The theoretical discussions are always stimulating. But I don't recall us having that specific conversation, Elara. Perhaps you mentioned it in passing? His words were not unkind, but they were a knife to her heart. He didn't remember. He truly didn't. Elara watched him leave, his figure receding down the gleaming corridor, and a profound loneliness, cold and absolute, settled over her. The Leviathan's ancient, silent hum seemed to mock her, a vast, indifferent space where her past was slowly dissolving. Her private quarters, once a sanctuary of ordered chaos, now felt sparsely decorated, as if pieces of her life had already begun to vanish. Driven by a frantic, primal fear, Elara began to fight back against the encroaching oblivion. She retrieved a worn datapad, its memory cells her last bastion. With trembling fingers, she wrote, Day 78. The artifact continues its insidious work. Jax no longer recalls my contributions. Eris forgets our conversations. She taped grainy photos of herself with the crew to the digital pages. Smiling, alive, undeniable proof of her existence. Then, she started recording audio logs, her voice strained, raspy with fear. This is Elara Vance, lead robotics engineer of the Ethelred expedition. If you find this, if you can still hear me, know that the artifact, it steals more than just space. It steals you. She detailed her past, her family, her dreams, hoping to leave an undeniable trace, a ghost in the machine. A chilling shot of the artifact, humming softly in its chamber, seemed to observe her frantic efforts. A silent, predatory presence. The expedition's central command hub pulsed with a familiar rhythm of activity. Elara approached Captain Jax, who was reviewing the schematics, a frown etched on his face. Captain, she began, her voice carefully controlled. The environmental scrubbers are functioning at optimal efficiency after my recalibration. Do we have any new assignments? Jax looked up, his expression blank. He stared at her for a long moment, a stranger's gaze. Recalibration? He mused, then shook his head. I've never assigned you that, engineer. In fact, I need someone to check the auxiliary coolant lines in Sector Gamma. Perhaps you're mistaken. What was your name again? The question, delivered with polite indifference, was a final, crushing blow. Her name, the very sound of her identity, was fading. Elara felt a profound, heartbreaking silence descend. She couldn't speak. She couldn't protest. She was transparent, unseen, her pleas unheard. Turning, she fled the command hub, the hum of its systems a dull roar in her ears, her very being feeling translucent, a phantom in her own life. Later that night, the mess hall was quiet, its tables gleaming under a soft, ambient light. Elara found Eris Thorne nursing a cup of synth tea, lost in thought. This was her last chance. Eris, she whispered, her voice raw, do you remember when we found that strange bioluminescent fungus in the ventral cavity? How we spent hours debating its energy source. And you swore it was sentient. And I bet you a week's rations it was just a complex chemical reaction. Eris looked up, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He listened patiently as Elara recounted the memory, her words tumbling out, desperate to rekindle a spark of recognition. When she finished, he took a sip of his tea. That sounds like a fascinating hypothetical, Elara, he said, his voice calm, apologetic. A truly engaging thought experiment. But I don't recall us having that conversation. I believe I've always been rather pragmatic about fungal sentience. His eyes, kind but utterly empty of shared history, pierced her. Elara felt a cold void open in her chest, a gaping wound where their friendship used to be. She watched him walk away, a profound loneliness settling over her, a sense of betrayal not by him, but by memory itself. Drawn by an unseen, undeniable force, Elara found herself back in the artifact chamber. The obsidian-like object hummed with a new, seductive intensity, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated deep within her bones. Faint, alluring images flickered in her mind's eye. Seamless movement, instantaneous travel, the ultimate efficiency she had once craved. It was a twisted form of escape, a promise of peace in oblivion. The artifact's siren song offered release from the torment of being forgotten, a perverse comfort in simply ceasing to be. Just one more jump, a silent voice seemed to whisper, and the pain will end. You can finally rest. Elara felt a powerful, desperate pull to use it again, to surrender to its insidious power, even if it meant her total, irreversible erasure. Her fingers trembled, hovering above the smooth, dark surface, her reflection distorted and shimmering in its depths, a ghost contemplating her own dissolution. Back in her quarters, now starkly empty, Elara made logic's last stand. Her frantic notes were scattered across the floor, a testament to her desperate losing battle. She meticulously tracked her own fading presence, observing how the words on her datapad disappeared, how her own handwriting subtly changed, alien strokes replacing her familiar script. It was a perfect, horrifying inverse of her existence. She constructed a chilling mathematical model of her own erasure, charting the exponential decay of her memories, her records, her very being. A perfect negative curve, she thought, a detached part of her analytical mind still functioning, even as despair clawed at her. The logical conclusion: zero, the ultimate non-existence. The cold, undeniable truth of her impending oblivion overwhelmed her. Elara collapsed, the weight of the universe's indifference, quantified and proven, crushing her beneath its scientific certainty. Her tear-streaked face was reflected in the scattered, complex, self-erasing equations, a final, horrifying testament to her own demise. The expedition's central briefing room hummed with the low thrum of diagnostic screens and the murmur of conversation. Elara Vance sat at her usual station, a ghost amidst the living. Captain Jax gestured emphatically at a tactical display, outlining a new resource extraction plan. Elara knew the optimal drone deployment strategy, a modification she'd implemented weeks ago. She opened her mouth to speak, to offer a crucial refinement, but the words seemed to dissolve into the air before they reached her lips. Jax's gaze swept across the room, passing directly through her, settling on a junior engineer. And Engineer Kale will oversee the drone deployment, ensuring maximum efficiency. Kale nodded, completely oblivious to Elara's presence, or the fact that the plan was already optimized. Elara's desperate gestures went unseen, her presence unfelt. The chair beneath her creaked, a phantom echo in the bustling room. She was there, yet she wasn't. Dr. Eris Thorne's lab, a vibrant chaos of xenobiological samples and holographic projections, felt colder than usual. Elara stood by his side, watching him meticulously catalog a new fungal growth. "Remember that time," she began, her voice a fragile whisper, "when we first found the bioluminescent flora in the lower gut cavity? You said it reminded you of your grandmother's terrarium." Eris paused, turning to her with a kind but utterly blank expression. "I'm sorry," he said, a polite apology in his tone. "I don't believe we've formally met. Are you one of the new auxiliary engineers? I haven't seen you around the lab before." The words struck Elara like a physical blow, shattering the last fragments of their shared past. Her face twisted in agony, a silent scream of devastation. Eris, oblivious, turned back to his samples, the alien specimen silently observing her broken plea. The leviathan's deep, resonant hum, usually a comforting backdrop, now sounded like a mocking, indifferent laugh as Elara retreated. Back in her quarters, now stripped of most personal effects, Elara clutched her battered diary. Its pages, once filled with her precise, angular script, were now maddeningly blank. She flipped through them frantically, but the ink had vanished, replaced by an unsettling, unfamiliar script that wasn't hers. Desperate, she activated her personal audio recorder. Log entry: Elara Vance, robotics engineer. Date: Cycle 74. The artifact's erasure is accelerating. Eris no longer knows me. I am attempting to document my existence. She pressed play. Static. Then, a voice, deep and resonant, but definitely not hers, spoke of geological surveys and resource yields. Terror seized Elara, a cold, unyielding dread. The artifact's power was absolute. Pervasive. It wasn't just erasing her from others' minds. It was systematically wiping her from her own records, from the very fabric of documented reality. Her trembling hands dropped the recorder. The omnipresent hum of the leviathan, now a chilling confirmation of her impending oblivion. The maintenance bay was a cavernous, dusty expanse of unused machinery and forgotten tools. Captain Jax, grim-faced, was inspecting a faulty ventilation unit. Elara approached him, her shoulders slumped, her spirit utterly deflated. Jax looked up, his eyes passing over her, then briefly settling back. "You there," he grunted, a flicker of mild annoyance crossing his features. "Auxiliary. Looks like some of the old equipment in Sector Gamma hasn't been cleaned in weeks. Take this rag and get to it. We need to keep this place presentable for the next rotation." He tossed a cleaning rag at her feet. Elara stared at it, then at him. He didn't know her. Didn't remember her rank, her expertise, her very name. The humiliation was a raw, burning wound. She was a ghost, reduced to a nameless, entry-level task. Her silent, wounded acceptance was the only response she could muster. As she bent to pick up the rag, her reflection in a polished metallic surface briefly shimmered, then faded, an almost imperceptible ripple in her fading reality. From a secluded vent shaft, high above the main thoroughfare, Elara watched. Below, life unfolded, vibrant and utterly indifferent to her non-existence. Captain Jack strode past, deep in conversation with Dr. Eris Thorne, both laughing at some shared anecdote. Other crew members moved with purpose, their faces animated, unburdened by any phantom limb of memory where Elara once was. She saw them eat, work, talk, sleep, entirely unaffected by the void she had become. Her erasure was absolute. There was no ripple, no lingering echo in their lives. The profound grief that washed over her was chilling, a detached observation of her own forgotten world. She was an observer of oblivion, a silent witness to a life that continued without her, without even a memory of her ever having been. The Leviathan's constant low hum seemed to vibrate with a cold, cosmic indifference. She turned away from the scene, her gaze drawn back to the chamber where the artifact pulsed, a silent, insidious heart. The artifact chamber, a place of both wonder and dread, called to her. Its hum intensified, resonating deep within Elara's fractured mind, no longer a mere frequency but a seductive whisper. It filled her thoughts with images of serene emptiness, a tranquil void, the promise of release from the relentless agony of being forgotten. Oblivion, it seemed to offer, was not just an end, but a twisted form of peace, a cessation of pain. Her weary spirit almost gave in. The battle within was fierce, the instinct to fight for a self that no longer existed, against the alluring call of nothingness. Her hand, translucent at the edges, reached out, trembling, almost touching the obsidian surface. A flicker, a spark of an idea, a last vestige of her meticulous, defiant spirit, ignited deep within her. The artifact glowed with a hypnotic light, reflecting in Elara's conflicted face. Elara stood before the artifact, its silent pulse a counterpoint to the frantic beating of her own fading heart. Soon, she realized with chilling clarity, even the Leviathan's vast, dormant systems might forget her. The artifact itself, the very instrument of her erasure, would no longer register her touch, her presence. Her concept, the very idea of Elara Vance, would cease to exist. It was a terrifying thought for her analytical mind, a perfect, horrifying inverse of existence. She, the engineer who trusted machines more than people, was being systematically deleted by an alien mechanism. Absolute despair settled over her, a cold, intellectual dread at the finality of oblivion. A single tear, crystalline and cold, traced a path down her cheek, reflecting the artifact's eerie glow. But then, her eyes hardened. A sliver of that meticulous, defiant spirit re-emerged, a last vestige of her identity refusing to simply vanish without a trace. Elara Vance drifted through the expedition's central hub, a ghost in the machine she had once helped build. Crew members bustled past, their forms solid, oblivious. Captain Jack stood by the main tactical display, barking orders. "Keep those harvesters running, engineer. We're behind schedule," he commanded, his gaze fixed on a point just beyond Elara, as if addressing an empty space. Elara's transparency flickered, a subtle waver in her outline. She approached a diagnostic console, one she'd personally calibrated, her hand hovering over the biometric scanner. The light remained stubbornly red. She tried again, a desperate, silent plea, but the system, like her crew, simply did not recognize her. In a quieter corridor, Elara's frustration mounted. A technician had dropped a multi-tool, its polished chrome glinting under the bioluminescent ceiling. Elara reached for it, her ethereal fingers passing cleanly through the solid metal. A silent scream tore through her. It was real. She was unphysical. Further down, a heavy blast door, usually responsive to a proximity wave, remained inert, as she pressed her fading hand against its surface. Her touch registered nothing. The cold, crushing weight of her immateriality settled deep within her, a despair far colder than any vacuum of space. She stared at her own hand, its edges shimmering, threatening to dissolve entirely. Desperate for some anchor, Elara sought out her former quarters. The door slid open silently. Inside, a new reality awaited. Her room was sterile, stripped bare of any personal trace. Her carefully organized datapads, the worn blanket from her homeworld, even the custom-fitted sleep pod, all gone. Generic, mass-produced furnishings now filled the space, clearly assigned to another crew member. A profound numbness spread through Elara. She was not merely forgotten. She was physically excised. Her material existence, her very space, had been overwritten. She stood in the doorway, a transparent sentinel, a ghost in her own former home, witnessing the finality of her material non-existence. Elara wandered deeper into the Leviathan's vast, echoing interior, its skeletal arches looming like the ribs of a cosmic cathedral. She found a desolate, untouched section, settling her flickering form onto a fossilized ridge. To be forgotten was one horror. To realize she simply never was another entirely. Her logical mind, once her greatest strength, now grappled with an impossible paradox. How could a complex entity, a consciousness, be erased from the very fabric of causality? She was a temporary glitch, a momentary ripple in space-time that the universe had decided to smooth over. It was a cosmic horror, an intellectual dread that dwarfed any personal fear. Yet, amidst the despair, a tiny spark of defiance ignited. If she never was, then perhaps she could still do. Driven by this sliver of defiance, Elara returned to the artifact chamber. The obsidian monolith hummed, a silent, insidious song that pulled at her fragmented being. This was the source, the cosmic eraser. She reached out her ethereal hand, placing it upon the artifact's smooth, dark surface. A blinding surge of energy, cold and electric, flooded her mind. Fragmented visions erupted, swirling colors and phantom sounds. She saw fleeting images of alien beings, their forms shimmering like heat haze, then dissolving into motes of light as they too used the artifact. Their faces, etched with both awe and despair, flickered in and out of existence, their memories scattering like dust. Elara gasped, a silent, choked sound, as she witnessed the procession of the forgotten, their fates mirroring her own. The artifact pulsed, a silent devourer of lives. The visions intensified, coalescing into a coherent, horrifying narrative. The Leviathan, magnificent and ancient, was not a natural fossil, it was a cosmic sacrifice. Ancient aliens, driven by a desperate need for instantaneous interstellar travel, had hunted and killed the beast. Its unique space-time organs, capable of folding vast distances, were harvested. The artifact, Elara now understood, was the key. It was designed to fold the Leviathan's enormous mass, leveraging its inherent properties. But the sheer ontological strain of such a feat required a memory sink to stabilize the folds. The memories, the very existence of its users, were transferred into the Leviathan itself, becoming part of its vast, fossilized consciousness. Horror warred with a chilling scientific revelation in Elara's mind. This space Leviathan was not just a fossil, it was a living graveyard of forgotten souls. The final act of the vision unfolded, a tragic irony. The artifact's creators, the very engineers who designed this system of cosmic travel and memory syncing, succumbed to their own creation. Elara watched, helpless, as their advanced forms shimmered and faded, their own memories absorbed into the Leviathan's vast, silent repository. The artifact, a self-sustaining paradox, consumed all who wielded it, leaving no trace, no monument, no remembrance. It was a perfect, horrifying cycle of erasure, an inescapable fate. Elara comprehended the chilling truth. This wasn't just a tool, it was a cosmic maw, devouring history, leaving only the Leviathan and the artifact as silent, indifferent witnesses to the oblivion it wrought. The visions faded, leaving her in the humming chamber, a profound, terrifying understanding dawning. Elara synthesized the horrifying information with cold, analytical precision. The artifact didn't just fold space, it folded existence itself. It eliminated all historical context, all memory of its users. This wasn't merely a travel device, it was a weapon of ultimate censorship, designed to remove entities, events, or even inconvenient truths from the universe's collective consciousness. A cosmic delete button. The intellectual horror of such a design was immense, a violation of fundamental reality. Its power was absolute, its purpose chillingly efficient. Elara's gaze shifted from the pulsing artifact to the vast organic walls of the leviathan, a new, desperate hypothesis forming in her erased mind. She touched the leviathan's fossilized interior, a faint, resonant hum thrumming beneath her ethereal fingertips. The leviathan, though dead, was not empty. It was the memory sink, a repository of all the erased histories. The ancient aliens, their creators, herself, all their echoes, their fragmented memories, resided within this colossal fossilized beast. It was a living library of oblivion, a cosmic archive of the forgotten. A profound sadness mingled with a sense of tragic wonder. Elara looked at her flickering hands, then at the vast, silent leviathan. If she was to be erased, then perhaps her final act could be to leave a trace not for herself, but for the leviathan to remember, and perhaps for others to one day find. A new resolve hardened her fading form. When your existence is forfeit, what is the last thing you would leave behind? Elara Vance stood before the obsidian artifact, its silent hum a twisted lullaby of oblivion. She was a ghost, a shimmering distortion in the fabric of what was once her reality, yet her mind, the meticulous engine of her identity, remained. The visions had revealed the artifact's cosmic purpose, the Leviathan's tragic role, and the inescapable fate of all who wielded its power. But Elara was an engineer, a problem solver who refused to accept an unsolvable equation. She would not simply vanish. She would not succumb to the absolute silence of non-existence without a final, defiant act. Her knowledge, her analytical prowess, was all that remained truly hers. She would weave a message, a warning, into the Leviathan itself. She would not be remembered, but her act might endure, an echo in the cosmic memory. Her gaze hardened, turning from the seductive void of the artifact to the vast living architecture of the Leviathan's internal systems. A final purpose burning bright in her fading form. A ghost engineer, silently reprogramming a cosmic beast. Her ethereal hands, shimmering at the edges of perception, moved with a precision born of years spent understanding complex machinery. Elara, the engineer who no longer existed, now accessed the Leviathan's central nervous system, a sprawling, ancient web of organic tech conduits that pulsed with a faint internal light. Her knowledge, miraculously, remained intact, a ghost in the machine of her own mind. She identified key neural pathways, dormant energy relays, and the Leviathan's latent communication nodes. It was a language of biology and circuitry, one she understood intimately. With a chilling display of expertise, she began to implant a complex data packet, a final message coded not in words, but in the Leviathan's very essence. This wasn't merely data. It was a ghost in the Leviathan's system, a silent defiance against the cosmic eraser. The Leviathan's internal lights flickered in response, a subtle acknowledgement of her unseen manipulations, as if the ancient beast recognized a kindred spirit in its spectral depths. The ultimate warning, a message from a woman erased from time. Deeper within the Leviathan, Elara reached its core chamber, an immense crystalline heart that pulsed with the residual energy of a dying star. This was the memory sink, the repository of countless erased lives, and it would be the canvas for her final act. Her fading form hovered before the glowing heart, her hands, now almost translucent, completing the data upload. She embedded a fragmented warning about the artifact's insidious power, its memory-erasing effects, and a hint of her own lost existence. A paradox, a self-referential riddle for those who might find it. The Leviathan's core, now a silent sentinel of oblivion, thrummed with a new, complex energy signature, a faint counter-frequency woven into its ancient song. It was a bittersweet accomplishment, a final act of agency against a fate worse than death. As her form flickered, closer to final dissolution, Elara poured her last vestiges of self into the leviathan, a scream against the void, a whisper of truth in the face of absolute erasure. A powerful energy surge emanated from the core, rippling through the leviathan's vast interior, a signal now detectable by the expedition's instruments. An ancient leviathan awakens, and its song holds a secret. In the expedition's central control room, klaxons blared, slicing through the usual hum of machinery. Red warning lights bathed the consoles in an urgent glow. "Energy spike!" a technician shouted, his voice strained. "Localized from the leviathan's core! Unprecedented signature!" Captain Jax, his face grim, was already barking orders. "Damage report! Eris, assemble a geological team. I want eyes on that core now. What in the blazes is going on down there?" Dr. Eris Thorne, startled but his scientific curiosity instantly piqued, grabbed his diagnostic kit. "It's not a natural signature, Captain. Too structured, too deliberate." The urgency in Jax's voice was palpable. This wasn't a resource anomaly. This was a phenomenon. The team mobilized, rushing through the Leviathan's cavernous corridors, their headlamps piercing the bioluminescent gloom, following the powerful, unfamiliar energy signature that pulsed from the ancient beast's heart. A new chapter had begun, driven by an echo no one yet understood. What impossible message is hidden deep within the heart of this cosmic beast? Captain Jax and Dr. Eris Thorne reached the Leviathan's core chamber, their heavy boots echoing in the vast space. The crystalline heart pulsed with an eerie, non-natural energy, casting strange shadows that danced across the fossilized walls. Jax's comms crackled, reporting stable but abnormal readings. "What are we looking at, Eris?" Jax demanded, his voice low with caution. Eris, already scanning with a portable holographic analyzer, frowned. "It's complex. A data pattern, Captain. Intricately woven into the Leviathan's organic systems, but it doesn't match any known biological or geological signature. It's artificial, but unlike any technology we've ever encountered." He leaned closer to the glowing core, a vague, unplaceable sense of familiarity tickling the edge of his memory, a fleeting shadow of a thought that refused to coalesce. The anomaly was profound, a mystery begging to be unraveled. A message from a ghost, warning of an impossible danger. At a hastily assembled analysis station near the core, Eris worked feverishly, his fingers flying across a datapad. "I'm extracting fragments," he announced, a mixture of excitement and unease in his voice. "Technical warnings about the artifact we found, its space-folding capabilities, its energy drain. But there's more." Jax leaned in, his brow furrowed. "More? What kind of more?" Eris paused, his gaze distant. "Highly personal, emotional fragments. A desperate plea, a lament about being forgotten. It seems to be from an engineer, Captain, but I don't recognize the designation or the voice." Jax frowned. "An unknown engineer? We have a full manifest. No one is unaccounted for." A creeping realization, cold and unsettling, began to dawn on Eris, a phantom ache for a loss he couldn't name. What do you do with a message from a past that never existed? The extracted message was a paradox. Eris projected the data fragments onto a larger screen, a chaotic mosaic of scientific diagrams and deeply personal, emotional outbursts. "It's incomplete," Eris explained, pointing to a scrambled equation. "And logically inconsistent. This section warns about temporal displacement, but then it dissolves into a lament about shared jokes and forgotten conversations. It doesn't make sense." Jack stared at the screen, a blurry image of a person they didn't recognize flickering amidst the text. "An engineer, you said? Speaking of being forgotten?" He felt a subtle, unplaceable shift in his own memory, a phantom resonance of an untold story. The message was a profound tragedy they couldn't quite grasp, a ghost in the data that resonated deeply within their own, subtly altered consciousness, leaving an undeniable, unsettling emotional impact. A hollow ache where a memory should be, a ghost in the collective consciousness. Days later, back in the expedition's central hub, a pervasive sense of absence lingered among the crew. Captain Jax found himself staring at the roster, a vague sense that a name, a vital piece, was missing, yet he couldn't pinpoint who or why. Dr. Eris Thorne often paused in conversation, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, as if searching for a shared memory that simply wasn't there. They would exchange confused glances, a shared, unspoken question hanging between them, a void they couldn't define. No one could articulate it, but a phantom limb, sensation had taken root in their collective consciousness, a hollow ache where a memory should be. Jax looked out at the Leviathan's vast, silent interior, a new, unsettling respect for its secrets settling in his heart. The Leviathan held more than resources. It held echoes. Some stories are not remembered, but felt. An echo in the heart of the cosmos. The Leviathan's deep, resonant hum, once a constant, indifferent backdrop, now carried a faint, almost imperceptible counter-frequency. It was a subtle, melodic echo, a new, complex harmony woven into the ancient beast's silent vigil. This new song was Elara's fragmented legacy, a permanent, unremembered warning, a whisper of her lost existence encoded into the very fabric of the cosmic memory sink. It spoke of a brilliant engineer, erased from time, yet defiant in her oblivion. Her story was not remembered in the minds of her crew, nor etched in the annals of history, but it resonated within the colossal, fossilized leviathan, a ghost in the cosmic machine. It was a profound and melancholic truth, forever altering the leviathan's silent watch, a testament to a life that vanished, yet left an indelible, haunting echo in the heart of the cosmos.